Is there evidence for the things that you believe? You know, back in 2010, when I bought Leroy, my first World War II Jeep, I ran across something odd. After months of work, when he was finally roadworthy, I drove him around the neighborhood quite a bit before venturing further from home. We started taking trips into the city, and I was blown away by the attention attracted by old Leroy. Anytime you'd park somewhere, someone would come up and ask about him. Everyone had some kind of a Jeep story to tell. One that was the most common was how their dad or their uncle, or even they themselves, bought a Jeep in a crate for $50. They would all point to an advertisement that appeared for many years in Popular Mechanics and other magazines that showed a World War II Jeep with a $49.95 price tag. As a kid, I remember seeing this ad, but didn't think much of it until I started driving Leroy and was reminded about this from so many different people. It didn't seem realistic to me, though. First and foremost, $50 is a bit ridiculous. Even in the 50s, a World War II Jeep would have been much more than $50. Second, from everything I knew about Jeeps, they were specifically designed so they could be stacked on top of one another for transporting them. This is why they have flat fenders. They rolled out of the Ford and Willys factories fully assembled and ready for war. Why would anyone disassemble one and put it in a crate? It didn't make sense. So I started doing research. I wanted to find out if Jeeps were ever put in crates. In no time at all, I found out that they did indeed put Jeeps in crates. However, they put very few in crates, and these crated Jeeps were destined for the Soviet Union and possibly some British destinations through the Lend-Lease program that existed during the war. I knew from all the reading I've ever done over the years that most Jeeps that were shipped overseas never returned home. In fact, if you search Jeeps Okinawa, you will find the most amazing photographs of World War II's arsenal all in one place. They're stacked haphazardly in piles of scrap heaps as far as the eye or camera lens could reach. They made almost 600,000 Jeeps from 1941 to 1945, and most did not survive the war or were left where they fell. Usable ones were used by occupation forces after the war, but as I said, very few made it back to the States. I then dug through the closets to find an old box that I had containing about 100 issues of Popular Mechanics, Popular Science, and Mechanics Illustrated from the late 40s and early 50s. I searched and searched for hours through these magazines, but I couldn't find that ad. I'd have sworn I remember seeing it in there. I expected it to be between the plans for a boat you could make in the garage and the King Midget Roadster. It should have been right there next to the ad offering plans for a custom sports car that you could build at home for $130. But it was nowhere to be found. So I began to search the internet with no results. So where was this elusive advertisement that everyone else seems to have seen, including myself? Where were these Jeeps in crates advertised? Some say the ad did actually exist, but that it was an advertisement for a government auction listing. Send $49.95 and they'll send you a list of government auctions where Jeeps can be purchased. I spent hours upon hours and I still found no Jeep in a crate, no advertisement. Not for $50, $500, or $5,000, none. The only thing I can conclude is there were none. As history has recorded, absent of urban legends, the only Jeeps ever put in crates left the States during the war were opened and assembled in the field and used till dead, never to return to a back page advertisement in a magazine. I have literally had hundreds upon hundreds of people tell me this myth over the last 13 years. And it is just that, a myth. But people believe it. Either they've retold a lie told to them, or they themselves are lying and have been repeating it for so long, they no longer realize they're actually lying. It's hard to say how things like this get started, but once they do, they become fact. I myself, before taking a hard look, would have sworn such a thing existed. I know I remember seeing that advertisement, but it doesn't. It doesn't exist at all. The crazy thing is you can't tell people it isn't true. They get mad. Are you calling me a liar? They'll say. No, I'm simply pointing out a fact. So I don't mention it anymore. It never goes well. They are 100% certain of what they're saying, even though it's utter crap. Take Halloween candy, for example. How many times as a kid did you hear, so-and-so got a candy bar with razor blades in it? Or my cousin's friend got poisoned Halloween candy or needles in a pixie stick? Hell, there's even hospitals who will offer to x-ray your candy for you to make sure it's safe. Why? Are weirdos poisoning and sabotaging Halloween candy? That's what we've all thought and been told and has been repeated for years. But no, that's not happening. No one is doing that. It never happened. Well, almost never. There was one guy who poisoned some Halloween candy. His name was Ronald Clark O'Brien, and he poisoned his own son with a poisoned pixie stick. Dear Abby and her sister Ann Landers, both popular columnists, each wrote articles about the horrors of tainted Halloween candy at the hands of malevolent actors, as if it were an epidemic in society at large. But it wasn't. It wasn't true. It was a total fabrication. Much like Silent Spring, the book written by Rachel Carson that resulted in the outlawing of DDT as a pesticide. It's been said that since the outlaw of DDT that millions of people have died of malaria and other mosquito-borne illness. During the years of DDT's use, malaria deaths plummeted to near zero. Millions of lives saved. So what was bad about DDT? Not much, it seems. It supposedly had some effect on bird eggs, but the correlation was never scientifically proven. Placing the reproductive health of birds above the lives of millions of people is not only antithetical to Scripture, but is a monstrously wrong-headed way to think about the world. But such is the upside-down world that we live in, where animals take precedent over the lives and well-being of human beings. DDT was highly effective with little downside. It's been said that it saved more lives than any other chemical compound in human history. But someone had an agenda and wrote a book. Facts literally made up out of Rachel Carson's imagination. People, particularly politicians, believe Carson's imaginary and alarmist data. We have a bridge here in Pittsburgh named after her. She could potentially be the biggest mass murderer in the world, in history, because powerful people believed her lie and acted on that lie. And the results of that lie have been absolutely catastrophic. To this day, people believe that DDT was some terrible polluting killer. Nope, it wasn't. Anyhow, getting back to the Jeep in a crate story, yeah, I get it. It's a cool story. You want it to be true. It was the vehicle that won the war. The war to end all wars. Everyone would like to think one could buy a piece of that glory, wrapped up in a big gift box and for a mere $50. Especially with the value of these old Jeeps exceeding $25,000 on today's market. So I get it. Cool story, bro, as they say. But the Halloween candy thing? How would this get so much traction? DDT? Why do people think it's some horrible polluting killer when it's actually a lifesaver? Well, my guess would be that each of these very prolific myths has some appeal to human emotion, the study of which may be well above my pay grade, but I do know this. As a parent, anyways, I'd do whatever it takes to protect my children. Whether from razor blades and candy bars or DDT, as Carson's vivid imagination described it. So perhaps it's the fear emotion that perpetuates these lies. Anyhow, the question remains, how many things do we think we actually know that are actually not true at all? A good benchmark to know if you are prone to falling victim to these types of urban legends and long-repeated lies is the example of Helen Keller. Take a look at her life and her abilities and dare to tell yourself, yep, a deaf and blind person can do all those things, especially if that person is an outspoken socialist at a time when the movement was first getting traction in the West. Now, no deaf and blind person has ever been able to accomplish these things since, but yeah, that's real. She was real. The point here is question everything. You may be repeating a lie without even realizing you're doing it. One thing I do wonder, though, is how many people will watch this video and still inspect the Halloween candy. Or maybe, like me, it's just your excuse to eat some.